Hey guys, RC here, going over the WizJet Chassis. So I've got some minor things I want to go over. Chassis came out really nice. This is just one I just pulled off the line. And the rear, this is an 064 pin, it's a snug fit. And this is an 065 in the front, it's a snug fit as well. Sometimes there could be a tiny little bit of flashing in a hole, but there is absolutely no movement in the chassis here. And the snug fit pins, the reason why you want to use those is because if it's loose, you can just use an 062 and it will always make it look right. Some guys check their chassis with the wrong pins, and that kind of creates, you know, some falses on your chassis. You put it together and it's three-wheeling all over the place because you peen the holes afterwards. And see, there's a microscopic touch there you can hear. It's probably off 1 thou from side to side there, you know. And it's molding. You can't get everything 100% perfect, but we did the best we could, and it seems like 99% of them are really good. So there's the chassis. It weighs about 0.5 grams more than an Aurora chassis with the exact same components, just like this. This is 4.5 grams. An Aurora chassis is 4 grams in this design. Sorry about the phone. So the rear axle hole, like I said, was 64. You can run this is just one of our stainless steel axles, and you can see it's got very minimal movement, but it is free in there, and that's what we want. We want very minimal play. That way you don't have to peen nearly as much. Front axle's got a little bit more play, and that's actually on purpose. That's due to, in case you run on bumpy or plastic tracks, that is actually, sometimes you need that play. And it's not very common anymore, but it's very easy to peen out of a chassis. The armhole is a 64. It's actually perfect for like a dash type shaft, because that's basically what we're probably going to be running in the future, is a shaft like that for a motor, because that's what's available and that's what most people use. And so you'll have very minimal peening work for a freight car at this point. Now, on the flip side, what that means is, some of the stock Aurora arms, they varied from 62 to 65. Some even, I've seen a 66 before. Depending on the shaft size that you get, whether it's a copper one, a steel one, all that stuff matters. You may have to remount the armhole depending on what's there. We tried to actually tighten the drive shaft up so you wouldn't have to peen it as well back here, but that presented its own problems. As you can see, the riveting, is very consistent, very clean. So we tried to tighten up back here, and we decided against it. It's actually closer to a 65, because what ends up happening is if you make the whole thing really tight, it creates extra friction. And instead of the way we peen them now, we peen them on the top and bottom, and when you peen them like that, they tend to create 2 bushings in a pocket, so you only actually ride on 2 points. It does, when it was tighter, it did create more drag, and I was just completely against that for a race car. So, that's the reason why it's there. I mean, I could have told people to ream it out, but I don't think that's necessarily the correct thing either, because if anything's misaligned by less than a tiny little bit, it'll cause a bind, before that. So those are the main things that are there. I've had a sample car built here for a month and a half probably, and it's still dead quiet. And this material of the chassis is designed to not shrink as much as the Aurora chassis. It's not quite the same material as an Aurora chassis, but it has been designed for this purpose. And so basically what we're going to have is the normal stuff you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to peen the, the back plate for a race car, things like that. But that's, that's normal at this point. The one problematic area, which is just something that it's just a tolerance thing, is the spacers for, say, our front end, or for hanging front ends. For some reason, this area right here is a little thicker than the Aurora. I mean, it's only a couple thou, but what it does, and I'm trying to show you, what it does is that this axle would slide through. See, now it's tight. So basically what has happened is there's a little extra. If I just put one in, it's fine. What it does is it bows it. It's a little tight, but it's not nearly as bad. It bows the axle down to, in the holes on both sides. So what you're going to need to do is right here on this ledge, you just file that ledge probably about 3 thou on each of these spacers, and this should slide right on here. We are in the process of getting them remade with that already done. But till then, I mean, like, the axle still slides with it on there. It's just not quite as, free as it should be. The other things of note is I would not use super glue as a guide pin, as I do have some natural release agent inside the chassis. So the super glue will last, but I don't know how long. I would use some sort of contact cement or goop. I think that would be the, Plyobond or goop are the two big ones that most guys use for those. And my final thoughts about this whole project is that now that we have a chassis that you shouldn't have to really sort and go through, the price of cars should come down. $250 for a freight car is just too much. There shouldn't be reject chassis. There shouldn't be, you're not going to have to buy chassis for armatures. You're not, and then sort through them and then try and reuse the parts like we've been doing in the past. I can build a top-notch car for myself in 2 hours using this chassis because I don't have to boil it. I don't have to do any of the setup work. Yeah, things like that. So, you can lay out all the parts and all, like top freight parts, being generous on pricing. The total cost of parts is about $108. So with half the stuff being done for you, we shouldn't have to have as many cars built for us, which will be good by the top builders. That being said, if you're going to have somebody build you a car, make sure that they, if you're going to pay $250 for a car, you better see that there's 4 hours worth of work in the car and not just an assembly line car, basically. If you're getting an assembly line car, you should be paying less. I'm kind of hoping that, because if you get $108, that's 3 hours of time, basically, for $200. And if we get, assembly line cars are fine too, because they get product out, and that's great, but the assembly line car should be cheaper than somebody who would give you an entire build sheet and tested the car on 6 tracks and shows you what they did. So keep that in mind. Don't overpay. I prefer people not to overpay for cars anymore. It just seems like $250 is just keeping people out of, fray racing, and that's without a body. So, let's keep the thing, let's try and get cars out there cheaper, build them cheaper, and still have good quality performing race cars. And, builders also, they buy things in bulk. They get things off of that $108 in pricing. So just bear that in mind when you buy stuff. I'm not against the guys selling cars to people. Some guys just can't do it, and I understand that completely. But, let's try and get the RTR cars down. If we don't buy them at $250, unless you see a lot of work, maybe they'll come down to $200, because they're necessary. So that's what I want. This thing really has performed well. I have had some people ask about what I based it off of, and I based it off every good freight car I've ever seen that I was allowed to take measurements of. And so I took the best magnet box stuff I could of the cars that ran the fastest. I took, the best of everything. And this should stop guys from complaining about, some guys complain that Rick Jocham has a lot of number 12s, and number 12s are hard to get. I've heard that complaint about 1,000,000 times in my life, and it is what it is. There was an H1 test chassis at the fray this year, things like that. This should eliminate all that, and so we shouldn't have to deal with any of those things anymore. So now it's more of an equal on equal thing. And so if you have any questions, please just message me about the chassis, and hopefully when you guys get the product, you'll be happy and I can see some cars being built and see some results. Thank you very much.